our conversation today, we're going to cover four main topics. First, we want to provide you with a brief overview of phosphate versus phosphite. We want to help you understand why using a stabilized phosphite is important. We're going to demonstrate Magnum as the superior phosphite in the market. And then we're going to take some time and compare Magnum against other phosphites that you may be going up against. So JD, are you all good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, great. Then why don't we start, if you can, by giving the group a brief overview of a phosphate versus a phosphite.
Okay, as all of you know, chemically, we've got two different molecules. Phosphate is PO4 by chemical formula, and phosphite is PO3, which is a very active, basically unstable part of the molecules, but the major difference is how they react in the plant. Phosphates are moved into a plant, but take a little more time, where the phosphite is readily accepted and can move both vertically and horizontally within the plant, so up or down. And it has good properties in terms of stimulating not only plant growth, but plant health and a lot of the mechanisms within the plant in terms of plant physiology. So basically, phosphate is the fertilizer side of it and a phosphorus source, of course, but the phosphite is also a phosphorus source to the plant, but it has a different impact in terms of its ability to help the plant from a disease resistance and also stimulate positive growth, etc.
And when choosing a phosphite, it's important that it is stabilized. Can you go into why that is important?
Well, the stabilization is the reason that NutriGrow Magnum was patented back 25 plus years ago by AgroWestern. And it's evolved into the stabilization means that when it's tank mixed and sprayed, that it remains as a PO3 molecule in the spray stream or the spray application, where unstable or other conventional phosphites, or what we term phosphites, without that organic stabilization they scavenge an oxygen molecule from the atmosphere, and it can be upwards of 20% in terms of the efficacy of that particular spray mix. So you could theoretically lose 20% of the application, i.e. if you were spraying 4 ounces, you might lose, not quite an ounce, but the rate could be off by that much, where the Magnum, being stabilized, stays in the PO3 form and can get into the plant, therefore, much more rapidly. The unstable ones, there's some data around that it could take the conversion to phosphate, may delay the import of the phosphate molecule into the plant by as much as 4 days. So that's a huge difference versus minutes and hours to the efficacy.
I'm going to play this video that we have here, JD, with the different various phosphites in action, if you want to talk through this.
Yeah, this little demonstration that Verdesian and them have developed over time shows the compatibility impact also of the stabilized phosphite. When you tank mix phosphites, because of that scavenging activity, they actually are a pretty good tank cleaner in effect. But with the stabilized molecules, the minor elements that you might have in a tank, if you were tank mixing with iron or copper or other input that you might have in a spray mix, especially in agriculture, they do a little bit more of that. But you'll see from these demonstrations, this one's showing a copper sulfate with different forms of phosphite added to the solution. And as you can see, they all precipitate out pretty rapidly with the exception of the Magnum, which remains clear and stable. So again, it's less likely to cause incompatibilities within a tank mix. So it's an advantage that not everybody might be aware of. And it can be very critical in terms of whether a spray can get put out of the tank. And in some cases now, with the cost of some of these inputs, it could be a very expensive oops.
You had sorry, go ahead, JD.
No, I was just going to say and these demonstrations are quite visual. They Verdesian at one point had a little kit that you could do a demonstration actually in real time for somebody. It's a little bit more complex to do it, but it's actually a pretty effective thing. If you were going to put a presentation on for somebody, that might not be a bad little demonstration to physically do. But this graphic that you just put up is pretty effective, and there's some literature with copies and printed out that show that information as well.
You had talked a little bit before about the enriched technology that goes along with the Magnum. Could you expand on that, about some of the benefits that go with that enriched technology?
Yep. The Magnum enriched technology, which has been passed through from Verdesian, and Brandt was putting it together too. But the enriched technology is some research that came out of Los Alamos Labs, and Carl Levitt, who was the original patent holder for the Phosphite from Verdesian and Viagra in the origin. And basically, it's an enhancement of the ability of the Magnum to facilitate not only carbon fixation, but improve photosynthesis, root biomass, a whole lot of sundry additions. It helps in the uptake and assimilation of nitrogen, increases protein without overdoing it or creating a excessive growth pattern within a plant. So it's actually a stimulation of the plant's immune system and its ability to utilize nutrients and produce food and structure more efficiently. It's quite an effective tool, and as you can see from the screen, carbon fixation is part of it, and carbon is critical in the internal, structures of a plant, nitrogen efficiency, etc. If you read into some of the literature on the enriched in particular, it will enlighten you, and it's really quite a separating tool or part of why Magnum is such a good product. Most of the others out there have nothing comparable to it, and that alone would be a pretty good reason to be using it. I don't know if there's anything else I should put on that, but it is a definite leader.
Thanks. So why don't we go into just some of the other key benefits that when you're talking about Magnum to your customers, some of your key nuggets and benefits that the team could use to share with their customers?
Well, obviously, like I touched on with the enriched technology, we're getting improved photosynthesis, and because of that, we have healthier plants, root mass, etc. The efficiency that the plant can utilize fertilizer is improved or increased, for whichever choice of words you might want to use. the carbon fixation part of the cycle is an ongoing and continues to recycle and improve the overall health of the plant. The phosphites also are important in their movement within the plant to help the plant establish its own disease resistance within the plant. So it's a kind of a multi-pronged tool, and it's some of it might be a little bit intangible in terms of what you might see, but the research and data on it shows improved protein, and you can use it on all stages of the plant. It has a very low rate. In our case, the basic rate is about 1.5 ounces, which makes it pretty efficient in terms of application too. So I don't know if I have to embellish any more. Disease is certainly why we apply it in a lot of disease prevention or reduction. May enhance the activity of fungicides in partnership with them. So there's a lot of advantages to it. And again, it's cost effective.
So there is a lot of phosphates on the market, and when comparing them against each other, it's not apples to apples. Varying pH levels, rates, stability, price, and that affects the price like you were just talking about. So we're going to pull up a chart here, and this compares NutriGrow Magnum and some other phosphates in the market. JD, would you be able to review this chart again? Just it talks about those items that the team should be comparing.
As you can see from this little chart here, the Magnum has the most phosphorus in it in the sense of the PO3 by weight. It's also relatively lower in the pH side than some of the others, so it makes it potentially a little more compatible on a tank mix. But the other thing that even though it may be a cost per gallon significantly more than some of the so-called other phosphates out there, the basic rate is 1.5 to 2 ounces per 1,000 on a 14-21 day interval, which makes it extremely cost effective in terms of cost per acre. And again, with all the extras within the Magnum in comparison, and it's stable. You can put that 1.5 ounce, 2 ounce rate out and expect to get significant control based on that rate, because we know it works. Some of the other ones, and even our low end one, that the 2826 that we've had that didn't have the enriched technology, wasn't as stable. So you might at a 3 or a 4 ounce application rate lose some of its potential efficacy to that scavenging an oxygen molecule and becoming phosphate. So maybe that's a gamble some people would be willing to take, but in my experience, the Magnum has always performed very well, and it is consistent. I don't know that I've ever seen any data to show that the others didn't work, but I've also, not willing to take a chance sometimes on that kind of opportunity if the conditions are, especially in some of the turf situations where Pythium and stuff can outgrow us very quickly and cause major issues. So I think I like the insurance of the stabilized phosphite.